Hello and welcome to the Rabblecast. My name is Eric Hernandez, here along with...
I'm Doug.
Yes, sir! And in this episode, we once again touch upon nostalgia. First off, we start with my bad Russian accent. I apologize. Right off the bat. If anybody listens to my accent and goes, God, that's horrible. Yes, that's the idea. I wasn't trying to be good by any means whatsoever. If you liked it, get your ears checked. We go from different accents, different dialects, different countries. Yes, I took Spanish in high school. Don't judge me. But from there, we just talk about movies. Movies, things that we love in general, action, sci-fi, horror. We get into a whole bunch of different stuff. I went to watch the Transformers 40th anniversary in the theaters. We talk about Dune 2. We talk about... Help me out here. What were some of the other ones that we talked about? I'm trying to blank off the top of my head.
There was some Star Trek talk in there, some Blair Witch.
I'm trying to remember the other one off the top of my head.
Yeah, I can't remember. I'm sorry.
We bounced all over the place. And then we end it with, if you have not seen it, the 2022 film Talk to Me, which, if you've got Paramount Plus, that's where I caught it. I would highly recommend it. It's a fun horror film. Be prepared for some outlandish scenes because it is horror, so expect some blood and gore. But it's a fun film. What would happen if you could actually sit down and commune with the dead?
Mm-hmm.
That's a simple premise. I'll just leave it at that. If you listen to the episode, you get more information. If you look up the film, you get lots more information. Watch it. You enjoy it. Let me know. Let us know. Send us a comment, tweet, email, whatever the case is. We are brought to you by InsidePulse.com. You can find us over there under the various different sections: games, comic books, celebrities, wrestling, TV. We never talked about wrestling tonight. Fuck, next time. You can also catch the show over at Rabblecast.libsyn.com. Follow us on Twitter at Rabblecast or X. Check out the Rabblecast Facebook fan page. Check us out on YouTube at Rabblecast. We are on Spotify as well. Download us. Give us some feedback, comment, whatever the case is over there. It helps out. Trust me. Share the show as always. And email us, rabblecast@gmail.com. I know this is a little disjointed. That's because I've had a lot of caffeine and it's starting to kick in. So forgive me. But check us out at all the usual places. Let us know what you think. Anything else, sir?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Without any further delay, let's get into it. Enjoy the show.
That was 10 seconds.
Yes, it was. Please
All
forgive my horrible Russian accent. For anybody wondering, Doug and I usually put stuff on in the background as we're, just having this conversation. As per usual, I decided to put on Deadpool via Disney Plus, and in the background is the one image of Deadpool with his hands on his face, like in an oh my god pose. In the background is a large CGI Colossus, and immediately the horrible accent just popped in my head. So, and
Man.
that angered you for some reason.
Yeah, you want to know why? I'll tell you why.
Okay.
2006, X-Men: The Last Stand. Two of the major characters in that were Colossus and Juggernaut, right?
Yes.
Okay. Common sense for that one would be, okay, when we have the big fight scene at the end, well, at least you should have at least one sequence where Colossus and Juggernaut just beat the hell out of each other. Like, I wanted like hitting each other with cars and stuff like that. But did they do that? No, of course not. They had to do that stupid internet joke.
Oh, do you know who I am? I'm the Juggernaut, bitch.
Yeah, that nonsense. Which, yeah, that was okay. That was funny for what it was. But it was like, fucking really, man. But fortunately, then we at least got it back in Deadpool 2. There we go.
Yes. Well, here's the thing. You are correct. For somebody who knows the characters, knows the content, that's what you would think. You have these two behemoths in Colossus and the Juggernaut. Yes, let's have them duke it out. Because that's what the fans want to see. No, what we got in X-Men The Last Stand was a change in directors, because at the time, I believe it was Bryan Singer had left Fox to go do Superman Returns.
That's right.
Was that the one with Brandon Routh?
Yeah, the one where you like super whiny Superman.
Yeah. Superman who had left and come back, and then by the end of the film, you find out that he has a child. Spoilers.
For a movie that's 19 years old.
Exactly. A movie that's 19 years old and probably will never get picked up from that story point ever again in live action. But
nope.
Fox felt butthurt that Routh decided he wanted to go do Superman. Not Routh, Bryan Singer, excuse me. That they got impatient and didn't want to wait for him to finish those duties. So rather than wait for Bryan Singer to come back, and don't get me wrong, Bryan Singer has got a laundry list of problems when it comes to Hollywood. If you look up, just do Bryan Singer allegations and a bunch of shit pops up, and there's a reason why he's no longer behind the camera for a lot of these X films. Although somehow he's managed to stick his fingers into every film that comes up, because he gets like some kind of like contractual residual for every X-Men movie that gets made henceforth. But
yep.
They got, oh God, what was his name now? Brett Ratner, I believe it was, the guy who directed the Rush Hour films.
That sounds right. Yes.
They got him to jump in last minute for Fox and X-Men, and they gave him the opportunity to make movies. And like any director, he brings in some, actors that he's worked with in the past, and he's got some, minor roles or supporting roles for them here and there. But it was no longer about what was the story. It's like, oh, let's just do something that I think is cool. Mm-hmm. And because of that, we got some really weird and really silly story points that just did not make sense. There was even story at one point that they had written a different script that had the Storm character, who at the time is being played by Haley. I'm blanking on her name.
Oh my God,
Haley Berry.
I'm blanking too. Yeah, Halle Berry. There you go. I was trying to say Nikki Haley and then Haley Joel Osment. I was like, those are both breathtakingly wrong.
I could picture her face, but I couldn't, like, the last name was not popping in my head. Halle Berry.
Yeah, me too. I was like, Catwoman, gorgeous. She's been in a ton of movies.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Gothica. A bunch of them are there. But Halle Berry at that point was given a script where apparently Storm was at the forefront. Like, they made Storm into a goddess. Mm-hmm. But they only wrote the script so that she could come back on board to the project. Once they got her back on board, they ditched that script and wrote a new one. And I can't remember the name of the director before Ratner, who said, well, why aren't we doing this script? Because that whole Storm angle is really cool. And the studio even said as much that, oh no, we're just doing that to secure her to sign back on. Once she's signed back on, we can change it to whatever the fuck we want. And that director said, well, if that's the case, then I'm out. Fuck you all. That's dirty. Yeah. Good luck on your film. And unfortunately, we got X-Men The Last Stand. X-Men, the first movie, don't get me wrong, it's a fun film. It introduces us to the world of the X-Men. Unfortunately, it falls victim to what a lot of X-Men stories fall victim to, and that is that Wolverine ends up becoming the main character, even though he's only a bit character. His popularity just grew to a point where he was everywhere in all the Marvel books and X-Men books. And I think you and I had mentioned at one point that when Marvel didn't really have a through line for their stories in their books, Wolverine would pop up in the Avengers, and he'd pop up in Spider-Man, and he'd pop up in the X-Men, then he'd pop up in his own book. And you're just like, wait a minute, how is Wolverine in space fighting the Brood, and also he's somewhere in Germany with Captain America fighting Nazis? Like, this doesn't make sense at all whatsoever. So, because they had that loose continuity, some of the writers were just like, oh, I just want to write Wolverine. Or the edict was, you have to put Wolverine in your book and make this story point, whatever the case is. That's also why we have the one cartoon, Wolverine and the X-Men, that was out a few years back, which, again, is another retelling of, like, the X-Men, the Fox X-Men, essentially. It was after that. It's not connected to it in any way, but they made Wolverine the centerpiece of the X-Men storyline again. It's like, that's not the case. Like, Wolverine is not the most important X-Men. We can do this a lot better if we had some variety. But X2, which, don't get me wrong, although it is another Wolverine-centric story, gave us more X-Men, gave us more story, and gave us Dark Phoenix, at least the setup for. But
that was the best one out of the early ones. That was the best one by far.
Very much so, yes. Especially because we got Nightcrawler by Alan Cummings, and that was just an amazing portrayal, live action. Especially when you see him teleport throughout the White House and get to the Oval Office and get this close to taking out the Commander-in-Chief. But then his hold of the mind control is broken and he teleports out. No, by the time we got to The Last Stand, that's unfortunately just the idea of diminishing returns had caught up to the films. Because Fox didn't care at that point. Like, oh, it's just another X-Men film. Let's just get it out there. And it wasn't really given the chance to breathe as it was supposed to. Bryan Singer's original idea of 3 films, the trilogy, just fell apart because he left. So now with everything going on with Wolverine and Deadpool, Deadpool and Wolverine, or Deadpool 3, however you want to refer to it as, now we're getting another chance to look at these. Now we're going to get another resurgence of the X-Men. We've said it before, 2024 is going to be the year of the X-Men because there's a lot of stuff centered around them at this point. The X-Men 97 cartoon was amazing. If you have not watched it, I highly recommend it. They take a lot of liberties with storylines, and they mash a lot of things together to make those episodes happen, but they pull them off so well that by the end of it, you're like, wow, I want more. When is season 2 coming? Well, gotta wait and see what happens. But the writing choices have been done as per Lenore Zahn, who voices Rogue. She says that all her main lines or her main sessions have been done. At this point, all they're doing is like ADR or pickup lines. So if anything has to get changed or something has to get cleaned up, then they'll bring them back in. But they're well on their way to finishing season 2. So hopefully, maybe by the end of the year, there was a rumor. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. It takes a lot for animation, especially this style. And then you've got Wolverine and Deadpool. Why do I keep putting Wolverine first? Deadpool and Wolverine. And then whatever else is going to come out of that. And then the books themselves, the comic books, are relaunching the storylines as well after they did a recent Krakoa storyline. That was a pretty big hit early on when it first came out, but then when the main writer left of that storyline, it kind of dwindled. And once again, the main vision of that storyline just kind of like faltered a little bit. But for all intents and purposes, great story, great ideas, great, hey, why didn't we think of that before? And it was a way that they could progress the mutant storyline in the Marvel Comics. So all that being said, yes, my horrible Colossus accent. Because I'm watching right now is Deadpool takes apart all the guys on the freeway on the one overpass, and when eventually Colossus shows up, it's just, he is one of my favorite X-Men characters. The idea of like the heart of a poet and artist, but he's in this giant hulking organic steel body and just goes around and just smashes everything. It's just like, he can be destructive, but he would prefer to be artistic. And I just always loved that idea. And although the portrayal of him in the Deadpool movies is more silly than not, I'll take what I can get, because otherwise, like you said, in X-Men The Last Stand and X2, the Colossus that we got was like some kid in his like late teens, early 20s, no accent, and he just looked the part. He really didn't do much else.
Nope.
But when he armored up at that moment, especially when Stryker and his goons are attacking the X-Mansion, you're like, oh my god, it's Colossus. For stupid moments like that, like the teenager in you comes out, you're like, fuck yeah, let's see this happen. And then, of course, there's always the X-Men video game that was based off of Pride of the X-Men. The 6-player cabinet or the 2-screen cabinet, depending on which one you found, that had Dazzler, Storm, Nightcrawler, Wolverine, Cyclops, Colossus. And when you use Colossus's mutant power, it essentially, he released a spark when he transformed from flesh to organic steel. And you would just, it wasn't a power that he had in the books necessarily that he would run around and use. I mean, he was just big and organic steel. But when you hit the button and you hear like this bad Russian accent go, and everyone around you on the screen in proximity would just go flying all over the place. It was fun. You're like, oh yeah, let's do that again. And you just kept fucking spamming the button as many times as you could until the power ran out. So, good shit. Yes, I'm very much looking forward to, well, at this point, we're just about a month away from the next Deadpool movie. And
a little longer than that. It's going to be it's late July.
Oh yeah, like I just go by like we're like like a day or two away from June, so like we're calendar month. We're like a month away.
Okay, the end of next month then.
Yes,
I don't know.
We're there.
Either way.
For anybody who's wondering, we're recording this at what does it say? I've lost track already. May 30th at this point. Yes, the backlog still exists because my dumbass got sick, and my time intended to edit and catch up was recovery and comatose because my apparently if you get stressed out and your immune system takes a hit, then anything that comes along will and can floor your ass. I am a witness and attest to it very much so. But yeah, we'll get there. I keep saying we're gonna get it. We're gonna get it. Jen and I have made a plan this weekend where I'm gonna be hunkering down on my laptop for at least 2 to 3 days straight and just gonna be doing a lot of editing. So that's gonna be me going back over the last I think 3 episodes at this point, not including this one, and just trying my best to just crank them out and try to catch up. If I can get back within the month that we're releasing them, at the very least, like a week or 2 behind, I'll be happy. But I just want it caught up because at this point, there's other stuff that I want to work on project-wise that I just want to make sure this is clear before I start something else, because then I'll be falling behind on something else. But that's just me. So, all that is to say, Mr. Douglas, how are you?
I'm tired and pissed. How are you?
Are you pissed because of the accent, or are you pissed because of life?
Life.
Okay. I will never use this accent in a voiceover. It's horrible.
I don't know what sounds worse, like a bad Russian, a fake German accent, a fake Russian accent. No, it's probably the Russian accent.
Really? I would think the German accent would be worse, because German, like, it takes feeling to do German. Like, mach schnell, mach schnell. Like, you've got to, like, lean into it. But then again, I've never really, like, done Russian language before, so besides whatever I've heard on cartoons, movies, or like Ivan Drago. Whatever he eats, he destroys.
Well, the problem is with Russian accents is everybody overplays them.
Yeah, that's very true. Yes, and that's also Hollywood, unfortunately, saying like, play it up. You know, the audience is going to love it.
I remember, not to go too far back in time, but I was listening to the podcast about Chernobyl. That was an interview it was hosted by the guy from NPR, speaking with Craig Mazin, the guy who wrote it and created it. And one of the first questions he had in the first episode, so why is everybody British? And the guy even said, he was like, you know, obviously we had all British actors, except for a couple other European locales. Initially they did film like a couple of the earliest scenes, and they had everybody doing Russian or Ukrainian accents. And yes, there is a difference. What that difference is, I could not tell you. But everybody just was like overplaying it. So they'd start fine, and then by the end of the scene, they sounded like fucking Boris and Natasha from fucking Rocky and Bullwinkle. So finally, they just said, drop that and just talk normally. You know, stop acting the accent. So that's why I go with that one. And yeah, there are some bad German ones out there, but man, bad Russian ones, it's just like, what the hell? So.
Yeah, no, you've got to be careful when you do a project along those lines, and if you're going to be using those accents heavily, you better make sure that whoever's performing them can do them well, because otherwise, when they come off wrong, oh boy, can you like tell? And there are no end of people who will give you shit for doing a bad portrayal of a, you know, Russian, German, or whatever the case is, because at that point, just like, if you're gonna do, like, that's the argument of, if you're gonna do the accent, just get somebody who can do the accent, i.e. get a Russian person or get a German person. But the funny thing is, every now and then when you get somebody of that nationality and then they do the accent, they're like, why does it sound horrible? Like, you're telling me to play it up for the camera, so if I'm like leaning into this a little more than I really normally do. I always make the joke that whenever I speak Spanish in front of friends who don't know that I speak Spanish, they're like, I didn't know you spoke Spanish. Oh yeah, leave it to the Spanish guy to speak Spanish. It's like, what the fuck do you want? And then,
Well, you think about it. There's so many Spanish people in the country who are second or third generation who might not have learned it at home. It's getting lost, kind of like how my great grandparents spoke Italian fluently because they grew up in Italy, and my grandfather knew some Italian, and my father knew maybe a handful of words, and I know even less than that. So it's one of the things that just kind of gets lost in time.
No, absolutely. With our kids, especially, we try to teach them Spanish, but I'll be perfectly honest with you. In my household, we do not speak Spanish on a normal basis. So for them, their default language is English.
Now, do you do that on purpose?
Not necessarily on purpose. I mean, it's easier for them because when they go to school, what are they going to hear predominantly? They're going to hear English.
Yep.
I know it's a melting pot of different nationalities now, especially in our neighborhood, but when they go to my parents, or we go to family reunions or get-togethers, whatever the case is, I try to make it a point to tell them, like, if you're going to speak Spanish, don't speak Spanish, but try to help them along. Don't try to admonish them because they don't know something. How are they going to learn if you don't teach them? Mm-hmm. And every now and then, like, my parents will try to help out and say something, but every now and then, like, one of the cousins or uncles will say something silly or stupid. I'm like, well, that's not nice. Come on. Like, that's counterintuitive to what we're trying to do. You're going to make them feel bad because they can't speak Spanish? Fuck you. Like, just stop. Here you've got a kid who's 8 and the other one who just turned 4. Let them learn. Let them get what they need. They can count in Spanish. They can say certain words. They can say hola, gracias, and, all the generalities so they can have the beginning of conversation. But if you're going to sit there and start asking them in-depth questions and start expecting in-depth responses, then they're going to be lost in the weeds. They're going to look at you, and their first reaction is they're going to want to hide behind something or just run away. Mm-hmm. So that does not help the case at all. So it's a touching point for me, especially because when I was growing up, if I had trouble with a word or if I had trouble saying something, I would always get made fun of because I couldn't get especially early on, I couldn't get the R, the rolling of the R's, and I still have trouble with it from time to time. Because depending on the word and depending on the inflection, there was this, and I'm going to get it horribly wrong. There's a phrase called los perros del curro. And
okay,
if you're getting the R's correctly, and again, I still have trouble with the R's from time to time, but los perros del curro, if you say it correctly with the R rolled, it's the dogs of the pound, I believe. That's what el curro stands for. But if you're not saying it correctly and you're just saying los without the R's, if you're saying los pelos del culo, then you're saying the hair of your ass. Exactly. See how silly it is. But my dad would do it to me incessantly when I was growing up. He goes, go ahead, say it. I'm like, say what? He goes, say los pelos del curro. And he'd say it to me wrong so that I would repeat it incorrectly. And it was all just for his, amusement and enjoyment. And then when I had to go to Spanish countries and he'd have me do it in front of people and they'd all laugh. I'm like, what the fuck, man? So, los perros del curro. It's not easy to say, especially if you're learning the language, but you're either saying the dogs of the pound, I believe that's what the curro was, or the hairs of your ass. And I love my father. He has some very, very dry humor, and if it could make him laugh, he would do it just for his own amusement. So that's where I get a lot of my dry humor from. So, but again, if you're gonna do something as far as an accent's concerned, make sure you get somebody who can do it, pull it off, where it's not something that they're gonna need like a dialect coach or something else. And that's a whole other thing too. If you're talking about dialects and breaking it down and how it's supposed to sound for somebody from the South, somebody from the East, or somebody, whatever the case is, what area of the country you're going for. Peruvians, when they say, I think I might have talked about this in the past, in my dialect, or at least my knowledge of Spanish growing up, if you say coche stands for pig. That's just another way to say pig. So when you say, when a friend tells you that they have to take their coche to the shop, you're like, why are you taking your coche? In your dialect, or at least in your region, Peruvian, Coche is another word for car. Gotcha. So when somebody's trying to say they're taking their coche, coche could also be like coach. So kind of like a means of transportation. So because of that little in between, like the conversation can steer wildly off, course. And then at that point you're just, what are we talking about? Are we talking about dinner? Or are we talking about auto mechanics? I'm confused. But
I'm reminded of that time. It was probably about 11 or 12 years ago that you, myself, Jen, and me went out to eat at that one restaurant. I can't remember which one it was. It was near you, down closer to the river.
okay.
And the woman who came to take our order, we tried to order in English, I recall. And she did not, I don't think she had any English. And then you tried ordering from her in Spanish. And whatever dialect she spoke was so radically different from yours that she just looked at you like I remember her just utterly confused. And we're like, I think we finally just pointed at the menu and she's like, okay.
Funny enough, I believe that was a Peruvian restaurant. So that's just another indication of what I'm used to saying and what she's used to saying. Unfortunately, they're two very separate dialects, and a lot of the words can get lost in transition. So yeah, it can happen. I've never had a problem with it when it comes to like anybody from like Puerto Rico or Mexico, but Peruvian for some reason is like the one that really sticks out. Colombian, a couple words here and there, none that I can think of off the top of my head. But each nationality, everybody just assumes, oh, it's just Spanish. Oh, they all just speak the same language. Nah, not necessarily. There's a few challenges and differences here and there. And then let's also not forget that as far as Spanish is concerned, you've got Spanish that's spoken south of the border, South America, Central America. And then you've got Spanish that's spoken overseas in Spain. And that's a more formal version of Spanish.
Yes.
And that's usually what's taught in schools. So when they're teaching you textbook Spanish classes, they're pulling from Spain, not necessarily from Central America or South America. Why? I don't know whose edict that was. Like, oh, we're going to pick this region. Why? I don't know. But that's usually whenever you see like lesson plans that are put together. There was what was the name of the character? So one of the books, and yes, for anybody wondering, I did take Spanish in high school because one, I was curious of the different dialects. Not because I was being lazy, but everybody's assumed, hey, why is a Spanish kid allowed to take Spanish classes? Well, fuck you, all right? I was curious to see what other dialects they were trying to teach you, and to varying different degrees, I would either get along with the Spanish teacher, or the Spanish teacher would like try to correct me. But I think one of the guys, his name was Senor McPherson. He was nice enough to say, oh, okay, this is how we say it as far as the class is concerned, but how do you say it at home? And when I would explain what we would do and what we would go through, he goes, okay, I'll grade you on what you know and just try to work with the class. And then I had another Spanish teacher who was adamant that I had to do it her way. So when I sat in the class and just ignored her lessons, ignored the workbook, ignored the tests, she finally just looked at me and goes, look, just take the tests and I'll pass you on that, because you obviously don't want to do it the way I'm like. It's not that I don't want to do it. You're trying to like talk down to me as far as the class is concerned. Like, understand, the last name is Hernandez. It's not there just because it looks fancy. I'm like the John Smith of Spanish last names. I understand Spanish. I took this class for a reason, but you're trying to correct me every time I speak, and that's not really taken well. But when she saw that I was just pretty much showing up to class, either reading comic books, drawing, or just completely ignoring everything in general, but still acing the tests and the quizzes, finally it was like, all right, just participate a little bit because you're making me look bad. Okay, well, then let's work together and figure this out. But yeah, it was just an idea. There was not Sorrento, but there was a character in Spain in old neighborhoods where El Serrano, maybe, who would go around, and it was essentially like a night watchman. He would walk around. He'd have a cane. He'd have a ring of keys, and all the keys would unlock all the doors in the neighborhood. And he would essentially just walk the streets, make sure everything's okay. And if anybody ever had a problem trying to get into their homes, he would come up and would be able to unlock their doors and let them into their homes. This is a drastically different time where you would trust one person to walk the neighborhood and just keep watch of everybody's homes, essentially. So, I don't know, like maybe like 30, 40, maybe 50 homes, but he'd have like a huge key ring that he'd walk around with. And when they would tell this story, I'm like, this is nothing that would be happening in Guatemala, El Salvador, any region that I was familiar with. So I'm like, this has got to be somewhere else. And that's like, oh, yeah, okay. This makes more sense. This is from Spain. Because there was a little bit more trust over there. In the other Spanish-speaking countries, there's a little less trust. You try giving somebody all the keys to the neighborhood in Mexico, and some shit's going to go down. I'm saying, I don't know. And maybe that's just what I've learned and what I've seen growing up. But yeah, it's not a good idea to give somebody all the keys to the neighborhood and expect shit to go smooth. So I don't know how we got into this from a fucking Russian accent all the way to fucking Spain, but hey, it happens.
We started speaking on language.
I'm sorry, my Russian accent, my poor Russian accent got us all the way here.
Shit happens. It is what it is.
But is there anything coming up or anything going on that you are looking up to or looking to partake in?
No.
No, okay. Tonight and last night. No, dude.
I'm a joyless bastard these days, man.
I ask because I feel bad. Last night I wasn't feeling right, so I stayed home. And then obviously tonight we're recording, but last night and tonight, select theaters are doing the 30th anniversary screening of The Crow. And I've seen
I thought that happened earlier this month.
Some places did do it earlier this month, but like a lot more places were, I guess, like collectively doing it on the 29th and 30th. And we're using those days. And I've seen a lot of people online. I have a friend on the West Coast who went to a screening, people here in Jersey, other people, I think on Twitter or X, I saw in Australia, they managed to get together a screening, and people are just getting together and screening the old Brandon Lee film and honoring the 30th anniversary of the film. So much so that even Alex Proyas has been touched, and he went online, social media, and said, I love it, the fact that everybody's reviving the old film and keeping the memory and the idea of what Brandon Lee did back then. Like, he was just a beautiful mind to be able to do that film, and it's great to see all the fans coming out. Because, again, this is all in anticipation that, I think it's in July, we're going to be getting the new Crow movie, which, again, you have to wait and see. I'm not going to speak one way or the other on it. I'm optimistically excited about it, but at the same time, it's like, no, you can't have a new one. You're going to just ruin our memories and destroy the old film. No, nobody is destroying the old film. In fact, I'm hoping that, who knows, maybe next year if they do it again, or in 5 years, if they do the 35th anniversary, that maybe then I can go to the films in the theater then. Who knows, maybe at that point my son will be old enough that I can take him, where we can enjoy it and just see it for what it is. But it's, I feel guilty in a way, as a big Crow fan as you are as well. Like, it's out in the theater. It's like, fuck, should I go or should I not go? I was like, I've got a copy. I could watch it in my own home. Yes, I love the film. Hell, in front of me, there's a statue that Jen bought me from one of the comic shops in the local area. It's, again, based off of the Brandon Lee character, or portrayal, I should say, of him from the film. So, like, there's ample time for me to catch it if I want to. But I love the fact that now, like, even though the theater right now is suffering dollar-wise, like, Furiosa just came out this past Memorial Day weekend, and they said that, yeah, it won the weekend, but it was like one of the weakest Memorial Day weekend openings ever. And I don't know if that's people just harping for a news story, or if that's an actual thing at this point. But certain films have done really well at the box office. I think Dune 2 did really well at the box office, but other films that opened up around that time haven't done as well. And whether that's the state of cinema currently, or people just aren't as excited to leave their homes for something that they can just watch at home in a month or two, you make your call on that one, because it's kind of hard to gauge what's going to happen. Again, Deadpool Wolverine, I would imagine that's going to pull in some big bucks at the very least. But there was another film that just came out recently, and I'm blanking on it right now. But suffice to say, it was the Ghostbusters, the Frozen Empire. I thought that was going to be another one that was going to be like big bucks at the box office. It did decently. It didn't do anything crazy. It did enough where they're still talking about another follow-up. So we'll see what happens with that as far as that's concerned. But it's just another thing of, you never know what's going to hit right now, because the way everything goes from theaters to video on demand or streaming, like, things will just come home before you know. Like, I don't have to spend the $10+ on a ticket or $15 at concessions. I can just stay home and watch it.
Yep.
And just enjoy it that way instead. But fuck, what was the other one? So I went recently. I don't think we had a chance to talk about this, because I think it was last week. I was going to mention this. I went to go check out the 40th anniversary of the Transformers in theaters.
Oh, hey, okay.
And a lot of people were talking about, the movie's great. I'm like, all right, first off, the movie came out in August, not in May. They're going by 40th anniversary of the cartoons being released. And what they did was, it was a cool thing. They took the first 4 episodes of the cartoon and they put them on the big screen. The first episode, they had you do a split screen. So on the left side, you had the cartoon playing, but then on the right side, they'd show you the voice actors actually doing the lines.
I remember you mentioning that.
Mm-hmm. They had Peter Cullen, Frank Welker, who are, OG voice actors. A couple other voice actors from when they originally recorded are still around nowadays, but we've lost a few of them since. Casey Kasem, Scatman Crothers, Chris Latta. They can no longer do the voices because they're no longer with us, but they got other actors, voice actors, to do the lines and sit in on the readings, and they have a lot of fun with it. So you can see. And the guy, I can't remember the name of the guy who did Starscream, but he did a damn good job as Starscream for a voice that's so distinct. Like, he hit his cues, and he sounded just enough that it brought the nostalgia, and you're like, okay, this works. For what they're trying to do, this definitely works. But then from there, you would watch the next 3 episodes on the big screen, and there was no split screen to show the other actors. There was a lot of people saying that, I feel gypped because I thought I was going to watch the movie. Like, the movie's coming out in August, and it's probably going to be screened again because it's become an annual thing. Don't feel so gypped. If you feel that upset that you want to go watch the first 4 cartoons or first episodes of the cartoon, you're a fan. If you're not a fan, then what are you doing complaining about it in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's silly. So much so that they released soda cups and popcorn buckets with the 40th anniversary poster on said bucket and cups. Depending on the theater that you went to, if you went to an AMC theater, you can get them, and it was whatever inflated cost they were for each one, and whatever the drinks and popcorn would cost. So you'd probably spend like another $25 on that alone. I was lucky enough that Cinemark online, you would go to their site, and they were actually selling a bunch of the merchandise, and they were actually selling the cups and popcorn buckets. So I got it, I think, like $15-20 for the whole set. So you know what? I'll buy that. I don't know if I'll actually ever use them. They're probably just going to go in my cupboard with a bunch of other shit that I don't touch. But I was like, you know what? It's 40th anniversary of a cartoon that I watched growing up. Yeah, why the fuck not? Let's drop a couple bucks. This is just for me. I don't get to splurge every now and then for something silly. I'll have fun with it. But watching the cartoon on the big screen was a lot of fun. I think it definitely, how do I say this? I've been wanting to do voice acting for a long, long time. I've talked about it ad nauseum. I've mentioned it. I've done coaching sessions. I've talked to a few people in the industry. It's very doable. Like, you just need to set aside the time and get a good studio or home studio, whatever the case is, and be able to do it. Watching the guys sit around the table and not only do it, but they gave you bloopers at the end of the session where they're just having fun and being silly. Man, this looks like fun. Like, they say oh, you can show up in your pajamas, you can do this, and not that you should show up to any job in pajamas unless it's openly stated. But I was like, oh man, just looks like fun. Getting together and being able to sit down and voice the different characters, get into them. Who knows if you're going to make the next voice that's going to stick to, generation of kids, and you be known as that. And then suddenly you have somebody coming up, can you do my voice message for, outgoing voicemail, whatever the case is. It's silly stuff like that. Like, who knew that Kevin Conroy was going to become so prolific as Batman? There was the one story that after 9/11 where he's in the one kitchen helping out for workers who were doing the relief and rescue efforts. When they found out who he was, go ahead, do the voice. Like, no, I don't feel right. And eventually they coax him enough so that he gets on the microphone and goes, I am vengeance. I am the night. And then so oh shit, Batman's back there. that moment, that just the joy that somebody's voice can bring when you convey or perform a character, that's always been something that I've always loved. And so whenever you hear Optimus Prime or Megatron or any of those characters, any other cartoons growing up that you can think of certain characters that you would hear, like, oh my God, I remember that one. And it just takes you back to those moments. Those are things that really stick with me. And I was like, fuck, really fucking got to sit down and record lines and send them back to my coach because he's been waiting. And I just things are busy, things are tough, blah, 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 blah. Voice acting's right there. If I dedicated enough time to voice acting as I do suffering through my day job, I could potentially solve all my problems. But unfortunately, the day job gets in the way, so it's not easy. I got to figure something out and see what happens. But whether it be reading commercials or again, I've mentioned Rob Paulson, who's very, very famous in the world of voice acting. He's referred to as the mayor of Toontown. He was Raphael in the Old Ninja Turtles. He was Yakko on Animaniacs. He was also Dr. Scratch and Sniff. Another, what was Scratch and Sniff? Was he Russian? Or no, he was German. That, voice and accent. I'm not going to list all his different credits, but one of the ones I did find out, he did an old Honda commercial.
Okay.
That became very, very popular, where they were trying to do different lines and different tags and how to make it stand out from everything else, besides reading the disclaimers and everything else. But he was the voice of Mr. Opportunity. I don't know if you remember those old commercials.
Nope.
So the commercial would be, they would talk about all the different sales and all the different events and all the cash back that you would get if you bought a Honda right now, blah, 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 blah. Come on in. I'm Mr. Opportunity. And I'm knocking. That was his line, essentially. He just improv'd it and fuck it, we're using it. And for a while, that campaign ran where Mr. Opportunity would always talk to you about the latest Hondas that are available. And it was just another thing where if you hit a commercial in a region, sure, it'll get replayed and used over and over again, especially if it's radio or TV. But then if that campaign goes national, now we're talking residuals, baby. That's when the money comes in. And for a while, I'm sure he was cashing some nice Honda checks just from doing, a few different lines here and there. So you never know. Things can go your way, or you're going to sit there and slave read after read after read, hoping that something's going to hit. And once you hit your stride, then maybe you'll find something, whether it's cartoons, video games, commercials, whatever the case is. There is something for everyone. And especially nowadays, they keep saying over and over again that we're not looking for silly character voices. We're not looking for necessarily anything that has an accent per se. But we're looking for natural voices and how you can carry yourself. And if it's done well enough, then that'll be enough to get you the job. And I've been told many a times that I have a voice that would sound good for voiceover. So if that's the case, and I have a love of all these cartoons growing up, I have a background, so to speak. It's just a matter of sitting down and doing it. So the next time anybody sees me on the street, ask me, hey, how's that voiceover going? Now, first off, I'll curse you for calling me out. But at the same time, it might, give me the swift kick in the ass to actually get it done. Because as it currently stands, the day job, no, thank you. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, we'll go from there. What was the other thing I wanted to say? Oh, so I did take my son to the movies this past weekend.
Okay.
He wanted to go watch the new Garfield movie. And my first idea was not to jump to Garfield. And I was like, all right, I'll go. This obviously is not meant for me. I used to be a Garfield fan growing up, and I enjoyed the cartoons, and I enjoyed the comic strips. But at one point he goes, I have to use the bathroom. I'm like, use the bathroom before we sit down. Come on, I told you this. But it's his first few forays into the theater. But when we ran, what was the name of the movie you sent me the trailer for? The horror movie?
In a Violent Nature.
I saw that poster in the hallway as we were walking down to use the bathroom. I was like, oh, there it is. I didn't realize it was going to be in theaters already.
Yeah, it's opening Friday, actually.
Tomorrow, really? Fuck.
Yeah, it's like a limited release, but there's some theaters that are picking it up. You have to kind of look around to see if you can find it. It's limited release at first. I'm assuming they're kind of just testing it out. They said before the year is over, it will be on streaming.
All right. Well, between that and Late Night with the Devil, I got to catch up because there's some good stuff coming out. That one keeps getting talked about more and more. The more people watch it, the more word of mouth spreads around. So I think we're primed for some good horror stuff coming out soon. Like, as long as it's creative and imaginative, I think now is a good time for the genre. Let's put it that way. Because I remember hearing that they're apparently going to go back to Blair Witch.
That's news to me.
Yeah, I don't know in what capacity that it's going to be done. Whether they're going to try to recreate the first one, or if they're going to play off of the lore that they've created already. So, and I don't know. There was a story. Well, there was also another story. It was a silly one. I'll mention it real quick, where the actors who were part of the original trio from the first movie. It's one of those like throwaway stories that you see on social media, where when they got too out of hand, or if they were getting too hurtful with some of the things they'd say to one another, they came up with like a safe word so that they could break, say this is, break right here because we're getting a little carried away. And the article is like, it's a clickbait article. Let's put it that way. So if anybody's curious, the safe word was taco. These three people, one lady, two guys, are out in the woods, quote unquote, searching for the Blair Witch, but they're left by themselves out in the woods with cameras, and they have to record one another, and they have to stay in character and everything else. And they said, oh yeah, taco will be the safe word. But then they instantly regretted it a few days in, because they're out in the woods. They're not getting any food. They're not getting any drink. Not that they were being starved, but they had very little to go on as far as rations. So them choosing a word like taco, like a week into filming, you're like, fuck, I'm hungry as hell. Why did we pick taco? But no, I would love to see something done again with the Blair Witch. I think now is a really, really good time. Whether they're going to try to do the found footage, I don't want to say trick, because it was groundbreaking for what it was at the time. But I don't know if you can do that again with that kind of film. But if they can find a way to approach the story again and make it just as entertaining and terrifying as that first one, then I think there's still some legs on that franchise for it to keep going. But
oh yeah, absolutely.
like we were talking about before with Freddy and Mike Myers and all the other, titular characters for the different horror franchises. Like, we've seen them already. They've had a number of different sequels and different outings to have their stories done and redone over and over again. Blair Witch has only had, 2 films and a bunch of supporting media to go off of. I remember there was the old sci-fi mockumentary where they would give you, like, backstory on quote-unquote the Blair Witch itself, and it was all just to set up that the found footage was indeed real, just to sell that idea further. And people are like, oh my god, these people, they found them in the woods, blah blah blah. I'm like, no, it's Hollywood.
was called In Search of the Blair Witch, I think?
Something like that, yeah. They did a good job on it, because when I remember watching it at my friend's house, like, they did everything prerequisite, like creepy guy hanging out in his kitchen telling you stories, the historian telling you about the area, stuff like that, just to, like, hit all the different marks that you would expect and go from there. But I think with everything going on right now, whether it's like that new horror film that you were talking about that comes out tomorrow, or Late Night with the Devil, like, I think now is a good time for either a new spoke to be added to the wheel of the horror genre, or at the very least a reimagining of one that we've seen a while ago, and now it's probably like now it's time for like a reemergence. Because I think we're over like the what was the one, like the torture porn, I guess is the one like genre of horror films, like The Purge and stuff like that, where
like Hostel and Turistas and the associated sequels. That phase has definitely run its course.
That was fun for whoever enjoyed it. It's like body horror. If you're down for that, I'm not trying to like downplay anybody's interests or anybody's love of a particular type of film, but like, so there's only so much cringe you can have when it comes to those kind of things. But I would love to have more supernatural, more storytelling, more of that stuff that gets played into more and more. And I think the Blair Witch was definitely something that had that going for it, because it was so undefined. It was so mysterious. It was never really told what it was. They played with it here and there. They gave you ideas of what it could have been, or ideas how it could have gone, whatever the case was, but they never flat out told you. It's like Freddy Krueger worked because it was so mysterious, but as his story got fleshed out, they're like, oh, okay, it's a revenge story, different idea. Jason Voorhees, same thing. Like we learned once the characters were, unfortunately, once they humanized them, they're like, all right, the mystery's gone. We don't have anything else. Now we can just do reimaginings and everything else. But the Blair Witch never had that really done with it. Mm-hmm. So I think now would be a great time to play with it more before somebody comes along and tries to ruin that one for us as well. But that's with any story. Like Jen and I were watching earlier tonight. I don't know if you ever watched the newer Star Trek series. There was Star Trek Discovery.
No.
They took some radical ideas or approaches to it. The latest season, I think, premiered this year. I do believe it's the 5th and final season of Star Trek Discovery. But they introduced these two characters of Mull and Locke. And they made away with some kind of like artifact or some information. And now they're jumping through space and they're getting away. And like, there's no real like defining on who these characters are. They're just like thieves who are like on the run essentially. But in one of the recent episodes, they actually draw a line to one of the main characters on the show and the female character of Mull. And like, do we really have to like intertwine the character on the show and the bad guy? Like, that seems so lazy. Like, can't we just have them undefined bad guys? But because the storyteller wants to try to like draw parallels, I'm like, I guess you could do that. They just seemed cooler as like bad guys out in space, just trying to make a buck. But I don't know. It's different approaches, I guess. That's just me. It's like with anything. Once you define something, the magic kind of leaves it a little bit, and it's kind of hard to. Well, there is no putting the genie back in the box. Once you define a mystery, once you define a certain supernatural aspect, You're like, oh, okay, it's got its roots in something. Okay, that just seems kind of silly. I.e., the Force in Star Wars, when they say, oh, it's because of like midichlorians and little worms, like little organisms that give you the Force. That ruins the idea of the Force. Come on.
Yep.
At the very least, like if you watch Dune, which is a parallel between the two of them, Dune came first, but when they talk about the voice or whatever power that is that they use, yes, it comes from worms. You have to drink like this water of life that's taken from like these sandworms, essentially, but it's never quite defined as just that. Like it's an ability, it's a strength that you can use and you can manipulate people. And it's also like this whole idea of prophecy and, you know, the prophet will come and he will lead us. By the way, if you haven't seen Dune 2, fucking beautiful movie.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the first one day and date when it was released on HBO, and then finally now Dune 2 is released at home. And I got to watch that one, and I so wish I watched it in the theaters, because seeing the visuals, like we have a nice big screen TV in our living room, but I can imagine this watching Dune 2 on the big screen in the theater, and then having the surround sound system in the theater just makes it that much more amazing. Denis Villeneuve, who directed both films, like, if you talk about understanding the assignment, this motherfucker understands Dune and portrays it in such a way you're like, fuck, man. Here I thought it was like a stupid sci-fi film with Sting. No, this is so much more. So, if anybody wants to spend close to 5 hours of their life, that's what you're looking at for Dune 1 and 2. And apparently there's more Dune coming. There's a series on HBO. I do believe it's called The Sisterhood. And then there's a third film, I do believe, in production, or at the very least going to be in production soon. So,
oh, okay.
It's an embarrassment of riches, the amount of stuff that we have now. Like, if you would have told 5-year-old me that, oh, Transformers is going to go on for 40 years, and there's going to be new cartoons and movies and live action and anniversary films, I was like, get the fuck out of here. Then you tell me the same thing with The Crow 30 years later. Get the fuck out of here. Dune eventually is going to make a big comeback in a huge way. It's going to surpass a lot of the other films. No way. And then all this other stuff going on with the MCU. Like, for as much as everybody complains, don't get me wrong, there are bad films and bad projects out there, but for the amount of cool shit that we're getting, I'm dumbfounded with a lot of the stuff that's going on right now. So the fact that we get a chance to sit down and watch a lot of these projects being made by essentially fans who grew up loving it as they grew up as well, I think it's really cool that we're finally getting a lot of justice brought to some of these projects. More particularly, I mean Dune, because for the longest time, the early versions of the film did not really crack the code. And I think really the only thing that Denis Villeneuve did was he broke up the first story into like 2 films. Like that was the biggest thing. And then from there, all the visuals, all the background characters, just making the terrain look amazing. It just worked out very well. So, and that was a weird segue from horror into Dune. I'm all over the place if you can't tell. Caffeine has kicked in, but not too bad where it's like Vietnamese coffee. We're still having fun. How are you?
Yeah, I'm just following you, man.
Doug, I appreciate that you follow me on these silly adventures week after week, hour after hour. Because half the time, I don't know where we're going with some of these conversations. But other times we hit certain things just like, yeah, fuck, like, can't wait for this to come out. Can't wait to see this. Can't wait to... But, yeah, no, I gotta find some time to sit down and watch some more stuff. Because there are so many different projects that I've been meaning to catch up on. Whether it's horror, whether it's sci-fi. What was the other movie I got to see recently? On Paramount Plus. It came out 2 years ago. Did you watch the movie Talk to Me?
No.
I don't remember the name of the brothers who did this, but I believe they're are they twins? But it's a brother duo, did this horror movie. It's based out of Australia. And The premise of the film is there's this hand. It looks like a sculpture. It looks like something that you would do in an art class. So when somebody says, make something that's out of like paper mache or whatever the case is. So you see this hand. It's the little past the forearm, I guess you can say, or it's pretty much like half the forearm. But when you see the hand in the film, they can prop it up on a table and it's got its hand extended out to you, like waiting for a handshake almost. The idea is you grab the hand, and as you're holding it, you say the words, "Talk to me." And when that happens, you invite a spirit to speak to you. Only you can see the spirit so long as you're holding on to the hand. Oh, and I'm forgetting the other part. So you have to light a candle. You light a candle, it opens up a doorway, so to speak. It's like a beacon for whatever spirit is in the vicinity. You grab onto the hand, you say, "Talk to me." Then now you can interact with the spirit. Everybody else around you can't see a damn thing. They only go off of what your reactions are to said spirit. You see the spirit as they are. So whether they were like a drowning victim, you'll see them in like their bloated nonsense mess. If they were somebody who was in a car crash, they're all mangled and destroyed, whatever the case is. But only you could hear them and talk to them. The next step of the exercise is then say, "I let you in." Now you invite them into you and they possess your body. And weirdness happens. The premise of the film is a couple teens find this. And what the hand is the hand of a psychic that's been embalmed and encased in like whatever ceramic or whatever is the outer shell. But because it's from a psychic, or so the story goes, it has certain abilities or powers that allow you to commune with the dead. Now the problem is, once you commune with the dead, like anything involving spirits, they begin to haunt you. So the one character in the film, her mother is believed to have committed suicide. She was really distraught from it, doesn't know what's going on, would really love to know what happens. One of these nights where she runs into friends who have the hand, they're using it almost like a drug, because whoever does the trick with the hand, when you say "talk to me," you feel like a glowing sensation comes over you. It's euphoric, and you're displaced from your body while the spirit takes over, essentially. So they're using it like a party drug. And all you have to do is release the hand from whoever's holding it and blow out the candle to quote unquote shut the door, and you should be safe. But as we know, it's a horror movie, so shit's going to go sideways real fast. And the story plays on further and further because one group of kids has it in the beginning, another group of kids gets it later on. They're using it as a party trick. Social media, you see people like spasming out, their eyes are all dark and like, "Oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this." That kind of weird stuff. They're doing it as party tricks. But this one girl realizes that, "Oh no, I can talk to my dead mom. Now I can find out what happened. Now I can find out the truth." And again, shit goes sideways real fast. One of the other kids who gets a chance to hold the hand and does the talk to me bit, he gets taken over to the point where now like he's slamming his head on countertops, he's digging out his own eye. Physically he's just harming himself at any chance he gets because he's so distraught from whatever's inside him. And now this girl feels horrible and she believes it's her fault that it all happened. I don't want to ruin it or go any further than that, but it's a cool, fresh take on like a supernatural bit that you never would have thought. And by the end of the film, they definitely leave it open-ended, where the hand is still out there. Because one of the questions is they make immediately is, okay, if this is the hand of a psychic, where's the other one?
Okay.
And the one person's like, "What do you mean? There's two hands. Where's the other hand?" They never answer where the other hand is. But this hand, you see it change a couple times throughout the film. So, for whatever reason, you would think somebody would destroy it, get rid of it, whatever the case is. The hand itself has got like writings all over it in different languages and scribbles. It looks like a piece of notebook paper from high school that's got like writing all over the place. So it's gone through different places, different areas, different cultures, and people have just been doing the whole thing of like the urban legend of, oh, if you hold on to the hand and say, talk to me, you get to have that fun. I watched it and I had to stop halfway through because I'm like, this is late night. It's dark. I don't want to freak myself the fuck out. I'll watch this tomorrow in the morning and I'll finish it up. I wussed out, I will admit. Again, horror movies is not my thing, but the story intrigued me enough that it brought me back later the next day so I can finish it up when I wasn't too skeeved out. But knowing that the brothers who did the film and hearing their interviews and talking about it, they want to make a follow-up to it. They're also being now like asked to do other films. I think they were tapped recently to do a Street Fighter film because they're big fans of the games. So how they're going to tackle that, how they're going to make that happen, I don't know. But if they say, talk to me too, or whatever the name of the sequel is going to be, I'm down for it. And I would say for anybody out there who's looking for something to watch, again, Paramount Plus has it currently. I know Shudder usually has a lot of the films early on. We were talking about Late Night of the Devil. You know, absolutely. That's a go-to for horror as far as streaming. But I'd been waiting for this one to pop up. And for like the past year, I just like occasionally I'd say, all right, when is this coming released? When is this getting released? And it just popped up on Paramount Plus. I'm like, I'm there. Fuck this. I've been waiting for 2 years to watch this since I kept seeing the promos for the trailer. Now I get to see it on streaming, and it did not disappoint. So if anybody has a chance, I would say absolutely go check that one out. But,
all right.
That's about it, sir. Any other films besides, I know we talked about Late Night last time. I don't think of anything else that came out recently.
I've been kind of out of touch with what's going on in theaters right now. It's just been so far off my radar with everything else I've been worried about. So,
I mean, you're not missing much, to be honest. A lot of these anniversary viewings, a lot of these nostalgia viewings, again, Transformers, The Crow, stuff like that, are bringing in not big bucks, but they're bringing in a significant amount of money where they're like, oh yeah, no, we'll do a screening of this film again. So it's kind of like, in a way, I guess you can say like the old, like the Mahoning Drive-In. It kind of drove this in a sense, the theaters that were doing that, where they were taking old films and screening them again, because now people are like, oh yeah, let's go watch a weekend of zombie movies, or let's go watch a weekend of Ninja Turtles.
Well, retro always makes money like that. I mean, if nothing else, at the risk of sounding cynical, they're selling our childhoods back to us.
Absolutely, they are. I have a fucking popcorn bucket and soda cups to prove it. I paid for shipping and handling as well. God damn it, I'm weak. It's funny when we get to a certain age and you're just like, oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I wanna buy a piece of that. I wanna own a piece of my childhood, and then you'll go out and do that kind of thing. It's fucking weird. I don't know, man. We're getting old.
Oh shit.
Oh, here's one for you. Before I was getting ready for tonight, the Thomas Jane Punisher film.
Yeah, it's 20
years. Came out in 2004.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I can't tell you that when I saw that, it was saying 2004. I'm like, fuck, it's been 20 years. Do you know how many times I've sit there and like, oh, I could write a story, and like 5 years will go by. I'm like, fuck, I never wrote that story. So it happens again and again and again. Who knows? There's a guy that I follow who's a writer, Mark Bernardin. He's most known recently for being on Kevin Smith's podcast, Fat Man Beyond. When he does his solo episodes, it's called Black Man Beyond. But he said he wanted to direct a project before he was 50. Or by the time he was 50, excuse me. So he launched a Kickstarter campaign, and he did a movie short called Splinter.
Okay.
And the idea was, contribute, donate, whatever the case is, fundraise. Gonna get a bunch of actors together. Then he got like people for sound, people for editing, the whole shebang. Like, it's a professional project. He got a bunch of people together. He did the short. He'd been screening at different film festivals. And a couple months back, he released the short online and goes, all right, for anybody who's supported this in the past, has seen it, great. Now we're taking it to festivals. It's only fair now that other people get to watch it as well. Thank you for your support. I did it. By the time I hit 50, I directed a project. So now I can add director to my credentials along with writer and podcaster. He used to write for Entertainment Weekly. I think he did a stint at Playboy at one point in time, online, not the magazine. And it was just like a passion project he wanted to do. But he fucking went out there and did it. And I was like, God damn, man, that's not easy. But like I guess it's easier for him when he was able to fundraise the money from people who supported him. And now it's like put up or shut up, because now you've got the funds. Now you can do it. Now it's the ball's on your court. So, good shit.
Well, cool.
All right, so I think I've rambled on long enough, and I've done our 1 hour journey for this week. How do you feel?
I'm very tired.
Remember, tomorrow's Friday. We can do this. We're hanging in there together. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. My name is Eric Hernandez.
I'm Doug.
And we are the Rabblecast.